the ability to hit blocks. No different than what Adam was asking in terms of how we stop the run. Well, we have to do that to be able to sustain and run the ball efficiently, get a hat on a hat. And then hopefully we'll be able to throw it, as you see Matthew in the background working some techniques right there as he's loosening up.
Sean, with the emphasis and attention to detail that you guys are placing.
Okay, from an injury perspective, David Sallin, poor guy's back is still bothering him, so he'll be out for the game. Cooper Kupp will obviously be out, and then Josh Carty, Kobe Durant, and Bobby Brown will be listed as questionable. I won't really know about Josh until we kind of see how he handles today, but hopefully he makes it. If not, then Tanner Brown will go.
We know Bobby's the ankle, but did that just pop up? Or?
He did in practice yesterday. Tweaked his ankle, kind of a little scare in terms of getting rolled up on with some foot traffic, but seems like everything's going to be okay.
I asked Chris about this yesterday, but the focus on the run defense,
Yep.
the technique specifically of it, has anything changed in that regard of the process this week after what's...
Well, I think a lot more emphasis, certain front mechanics, getting aligned, and then obviously the techniques and the fundamentals. How do you want to take on double teams? How do you want to defeat individual blocks? Arizona did a good job with a lot of their schemes, but those are things that we expect to play better and more efficiently and be more competitive. And I'll tell you, Giff Smith and AC and really our defensive coaches as a whole have really had an increased level of urgency. I've really appreciated their attention to detail and the right vibe with their approach, and the players have responded in a great way. And then ultimately, what a great challenge. I mean, San Francisco has a bunch of different multiple looks and things that they can present from a run game scheme. I think Kyle and Chris Furster do as good a job as anybody, and then they got the players to be able to execute it. So what a great challenge for us to see on Sunday.
When you say increased, sense of urgency
Yep.
from those coaches, NFL coaches work maniacally anyway.
Sure.
How do you measure that?
You know what I think? It really probably a more appropriate way. I don't know that there's an increased urgency, more of a attention to detail in terms of, all right, some more walkthroughs, more time on the grass where you're putting guys physically through it. You're making an emphasis on maybe some things that, wow, maybe wasn't an issue as much in week one, and then, hey, we've got to be able to address it. And so that's probably a more appropriate way to articulate that. And then you're getting some guys up to speed. Neville Gallimore, he's a guy that he got here really late. Some of the front mechanics based on different personnel groupings and based on just the different looks that can be presented by the opponent, whether that's Arizona or what we anticipate San Fran might do. Those are key and critical factors that have a variety of different things accompanied with that based on what we're doing on the second and third level behind those guys. That's probably what I should have said.
I know circumstances have dictated how much you can run and not run.
Yeah.
But how do you get the run game going, especially in a game like this?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, and you mentioned it, the two games have been very different tales of why that didn't, you're down, you have 10 snaps offensively, and before you have your 11th snap, it's a 21-0 game. And so that game was very different last week. But it's really about the efficiency of the execution, the ability to hit blocks. No different than what Adam was asking in terms of how we stop the run. Well, you have to do that to be able to sustain and run the ball efficiently, get a hat on a hat. And then hopefully we'll be able to throw it, as you see Matthew in the background working some techniques right there as he's loosening up.
Take this moment, for sure.
Sean, with the emphasis and attention to detail that you guys are placing along the defensive line and stopping the run, how do you and the coaches go about checking for understanding, ensuring that the players understand what's being asked of them?
I think clarity of communication, that's why you practice, it's why you have all these meetings. And so, we got a lot of young guys that are playing and being in these positions for the first time, but how quickly can we accelerate it? How can we make sure that we're reaching them? How are they able to communicate back to us so that we understand where they're at? And ultimately, they show us when we get out into these practice settings and on the games. And so I think the most important thing really for our group right now is, all right, how disciplined can we be with our competitive stamina, our ability to stay within the moment, our ability to prepare and do everything that's in alignment with giving ourselves a chance to be the best version of ourselves for this team where real growth can occur. And that's the challenge that I have, really for myself, for our coaches, for our players, as we navigate, some of the unique circumstances that we're in the midst of, early on in the season.
When you look around
Couple
the
more,
league,
guys.
scoring's down kind of league-wide. Is there anything that stood out to you about why that might be the case?
It's hard for me to say. I know that our scoring is down, and that's been my main focus and concentration. And so we've got to do a better job of being able to, collectively and consistently move the ball, sustain drives, and then ultimately be able to finish them. But I think defenses are doing a great job. You see an uptick in there's more rushing yards, less passing yards. I just think you're seeing a heightened awareness on limiting explosives, some of the coverage contours. These defenses do a great job, but I also think 2 weeks is a really small sample size in general, as you guys know. But it's those would be a couple of the things that I would kind of point to as maybe why that's the case.
We've got a couple of young players on defense, Jared and Braden are immediately come to mind, obviously, who kind of spent the last couple of years of their lives like at the top
Yeah.
of their craft and their game. Then they come here and there's some revisiting of fundamentals and things like that these first 2 weeks. How do you see young players handle that? How are they handling that?
It's a good question. I think anytime that you transition, both these guys are resilient. Their stories lend to credibility, a toughness, and ability to be able to work through different, unique circumstances, whether it's watching from where they went to college, right out of high school, where it led them to. They're competitive, though. I think we want to all have this growth mindset. And you've heard me say it before, it's really how you handle the storms. And we're in the midst of a little bit of a storm right now, and we learn a lot about people when you go through it. And there's an accountability that we have to each other, and the types of men that we expect in terms of how we handle this. And those guys are really in alignment with what we're looking for as they're continuing to grow and as they're continuing to try to influence and affect positive change with their impacts, with how they move throughout the course of the week, and then ultimately how they play on Sundays. There's been some really good things, and there's going to be some things that they're going to continue to learn from. And that's really, whether it be for Braden Fisk or Jared Verse, that's consistent for me, for everybody. And if we can keep that approach, then I do know that it's going to give us the best opportunity to play the caliber of football that we want, for us to be shaped the way that we want to as people and as players and coaches. And that's my main focus and concentration.
Kyle said
Last one, guys.
this week, but you wanted to go on though. When he was asked about you guys, he was saying, when you lose 2 in a row, whether you've won 10 games in a row and you lose in a row, or you start 0-2, there's like an Armageddon kind of feeling in the building. And you've talked about how you tried, to kind of persevere through that.
Yeah.
But how do you not let that desperation maybe of losing 2 in a row overtake you and the entire?
Well, I think you have to be inside out. It's easy to say all these things I'm saying, Gary, but ultimately it's how do you move and how do you make sure that you're doing the things that are in alignment to stay resilient, to stay strong, to not allow those circumstances to change your ability to attack things with an enthusiasm, with a competitiveness, though, as well. Don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean you sit here and, hey, raise your hand if you're happy to be in this situation. Nobody's raising their hand. But I do know from experiences that pressing the panic button isn't the way to get out of it either. It's going back to work. It's doing it with the right authentic spirit, the right enthusiasm, the right kind of vibe, the right focus and concentration with how you implement daily, weekly, and hourly rhythms that are in alignment with improving and playing the best quality of football that we're capable of with the guys that are playing. And how quickly can some of these guys develop? How competitive, how much can we strain when we get these opportunities within practices or when we get to Sunday against a great opponent? What does that look like? And that's what I'm most interested in evaluating. And if we do that, then I'll tell you that's going to give us the best chance to get the result that you're hunting up as well. Okay? Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.